In this video, we're going to look at creating a lead sound in VCV Rack, creating that on a modular synth. I've just opened a new patch, and again, I'm going to select everything and delete it. As always, I'm just going to be doing this going under brand and VCV, just using the default modules. Like always, I'm going to start off with a MIDI to CV module. Zoom in a bit. And if I'm on Windows and I have an actual MIDI device, I would click on the center line. If I were on Mac and had an actual device, I would set that to core MIDI. But I'm going to do this with my keyboard and mouse, so I'll click on the top line and set it to computer keyboard and make sure that QWERTY keyboard is showing on the second line. I need somewhere for the audio to go, so I'm going to right-click and create an Audio 8 device. And on Windows, you would set this to WAS API and then select your device on the second line. Mac would be Core Audio and then select your device. I am using some fancy audio loopback routing, so I'm going to set it to ASIO and then select my audio device there. Okay, so that's set. So let's start filling this up with modules. I'm going to start with a VCO, and then I'm actually going to set a second VCO right next to it. And we're going to use both of these. So how do we use multiple VCOs together? And the answer is, instead of using a VCA to have an amplifier, I'm going to use the VCA mix, and I'm going to mix between the two signals. All of that is going to get sent to a VCF, voltage controlled filter. And in order to really use the VCA well, I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to come down a little bit on the rack. I'm going to create not one, but two ADSR envelope generators that I'm going to use. So let's start patching things together. And in fact, I'm going to make this a little bit easier by moving everything over. And I think I'd have just enough space. Perfect. We can get everything together. So let's start off by taking volts per octave and connecting that to the first VCO. Then I'm going to hold down Control or Command on a Mac and grab another cable from the MIDI to CV volts per octave and connect it to the second VCO. Then I am going to do the exact same thing with gate. Connect it to the first ADSR. Hold down Control or Command on Mac and take it over to the second ADSR. And I'm going to do that with retrigger as well. So retrigger from MIDI CV to the first ADSR. And retrigger, holding down Control or Command on Mac and dragging it over to the second ADSR. Now you're probably wondering, where am I going to put these different ADSRs? And the answer to that is that they're going to go to two related but somewhat different places. The first one is going to go into CV1 of VCA mix. And that's going to be really, really useful. So I'm going to hold down Control and take that over to CV2 of VCA mix as well. The second ADSR is going to go to the cutoff frequency modulation knob for the VCF. And I'm going to open that up by grabbing the modulation knob for the cutoff frequency and taking that up to full. Now, here is where things are going to get a little bit interesting. I'm going to take two different outputs from the VCO. I'm going to take the sawtooth outlet from the first one and connect that to input 1 of VCA mix. And I'm going to take the square or pulse width modulation output of the second one and connect that to input 2 of VCA mix. Then I'm going to do something very, very interesting. I'm going to take the output of the mix and connect that to the input of the voltage-controlled filter. Then I'm going to take the low-pass output and connect that to device 1 on audio 8, so that will be my left speaker. Then I'm going to hold down Control or Command on a Mac and take the low-pass output to device 2 on audio 8. So I can now hear everything on both the left and the right speaker. That's a little loud, so I'm going to take the mix down. And now, here's where the fun begins. I'm going to start playing around with the different possibilities. I'm going to open up the pulse width a little bit. Oh, that sounds good. If I change the ADSR parameters, I'm going to get some really interesting possibilities here. Let's take that down, sustain higher, and release lower. That one, we're going to reset and release all the way off. So we're starting to get some interesting timbral changes. If I take that down, I can mix between the two signals. With the VCF, I'm going to increase the cutoff. So I've got mostly the sawtooth wave coming through, but also some of the square wave, which I've changed the pulse width modulation on. Take that down even more. And playing around with those settings, I can mix and blend them until I get a really cool lead synthesizer sound. Okay, so I like the sound of that. Your mileage may vary. You might prefer more res on the filter. Maybe more drive. Maybe less. But this is a good starting point. This gives me a really interesting sound that I could use for a lead. It's going to cut through other synth elements. It's got kind of a lasery type pitch shift to it, with the cutoff filter being modulated by this second ADSR envelope. So that's going to really help to make it something that you can hear in a mix.